The Business Marketing Association of Philadelphia presents Aligning Sales and Marketing, Working Together to Increase ROI. This program was recorded in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania on February 16, 2011. Introducing the panelists is Tracy Brown, President of the BMA Philadelphia chapter.
My name is Tracy Brown. I'm with Red Cedar Marketing, and I'm the President of the Philadelphia chapter of the BMA. And if I could have, just real quick, all the board members raise your hand. If anybody has questions about Philly BMA and what we're all about, seek out these people, and they'd be happy to tell you about it. I don't want to give you the whole sales pitch right now, but it is a business-to-business marketing association. We focus and only on business-to-business marketing. Is that me?
No.
Okay.
Christian.
Oh. So tonight we're here to talk about sales marketing alignment. It's a hot topic. It's always a hot topic, but lately we're hearing a lot more about it, and we have a fantastic panel for you tonight. I'm going to lay the ground rules, which are, this is, as you can see by the setting, it's a casual group, so I'm going to have some questions that I'm going to ask the panel, but this is your event. So if at any time you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll scoot out there and give you the microphone. So without further ado, I will introduce our panel. Okay, so to my immediate right here, we have Paul Mosenson. He's the president of New Spark Marketing, and they focus on the entire lead management process, from lead generation to lead nurturing. Because Paul's team is a provider of content, as distributed through pay-per-click, social media, and marketing automation email, it's vital that marketing and sales are aware of the messaging and the importance of lead nurturing. Paul consults firms on this process by bringing marketing and salespeople together as one. Paul is also our sponsor of our event tonight, so those of you that have been enjoying the food, that Paul his generous contribution provided that. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.
And the caterer tonight was As You Wish Caterers. They're local and related to Allison. So if you really like the food and you're having an event, see Allison, she'll give you a card. And Paul also hooked us up with Podcast Steve tonight. And he's going to be doing a video cast of tonight's panel, which will be available on the Philly BMA website, which is bmaphilly.org or bmaphiladelphia.org. And that will be up soon. And we'll send everybody an email so you can send it around to people who missed the event tonight, and they'll all be able to take advantage of that.
Oh, I wanted to throw in one plug. I have on some of the tables a promotional opportunity for my company with some special pricing on lead management services, as well as a complete list of the lead management toolkit that we offer, and that's attached and it's on the table, so enjoy it and check out the special pricing only for members here tonight.
We're attendees tonight.
Attendees.
Yeah.
Louder? Louder, louder.
Project.
Okay.
Next to Paul, we have Allison Latanzi. And Allison's on the panel tonight because she's part of the team leading sales and marketing alignment initiatives at Portico Systems. They're using Salesforce.com to help them implement process to track marketing lead follow-up and to report on those efforts. They're also using marketing automation, HubSpot, to gather intelligence on leads. The sales and marketing teams work collaboratively on defining target audiences and tactics for marketing programs. She's also interested in learning what others are doing so they can best utilize practice in Portico efforts.
Hi, everybody. Very happy to see the group tonight, so thank you for coming.
And way over there on the end, we have Michael Brenner, who is the Senior Director of Marketing for SAP. He's the author of B2B Marketing Insider and co-founder of business2community.com. Michael has been working in marketing for over 17 years in various roles, where he's used customer insights to drive sales, ROI, and customer loyalty through effective sales and marketing strategies. You can follow Michael on Twitter at Brenner Michael, BrennerMichael. And he'll be tweeting probably while he's talking.
Not quite.
Michael's on our panel tonight because he started his career in sales at the Nielsen Company. And it was the lack of alignment with marketing that acted as a catalyst for him to move into a fun, eventful career in marketing. He then ran marketing for local firm ICR and Full Tilt before joining SAP. Michael believes that marketing should be accountable for results and needs to work together with sales on joint planning, content strategies, lead definition, and CRM processes. So that is your panel tonight. So we're going to start with a question, and what I'm going to do is I'll ask the panel a question, and then you guys just take over from there and have a conversation with each other, with the audience. And again, if you want further clarification on anything they're talking about, just raise your hand, and we'll get the mic over to you. So what are the hottest issues between sales and marketing in your organization? Do you want to start first, Michael?
Sure, yeah. Can everybody hear me back there? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a great question. Sales and marketing alignment is, I think, the #1 issue on the minds of chief marketing officers. Certainly it's on the minds of the marketing team at SAP. We make sales a customer. We believe in that philosophy. We don't all live that philosophy, but we certainly strive for that. And you know, the biggest issue that we find is often quality versus quantity of leads. It comes up every time. In the beginning of the year, sales wants lots of leads. At the end of the year, they want quality leads. And so we're constantly trying to balance the quality and the quantity of leads. It's definitely the biggest issue for us.
So for Portico systems, this is also a really important issue. And for us, it's really a little more rudimentary than what Michael described. It's really about just making sure that we're working in lockstep together. And a lot of the initiatives at Portico systems to get sales and marketing to work, you know, more cohesively are driven within the marketing organization and also within the C-suite of our organization. And really from a marketing perspective, you know, we're out there doing all these activities, all these tactical things, and we're putting together a marketing strategy. And really, if we're not helping to fuel the sales cycle, they're all pointless exercises. So we're really spending a lot of time in bringing the sales team together and making sure they understand what it is we're working on and making sure that we're delivering something of value to them, and also keeping them accountable on, you know, what happens with those marketing leads that we generate. You know, are they viable? Are they worthwhile? You know, making sure we've got a loop back into the marketing organization. So this is, you know, really, really critical issue for Portico. We're a software company. We're growing tremendously quickly, and we really need to put a lot of these kinds of processes in place.
Go ahead.
Yeah. You know, it is a big issue, and if anybody remember years ago when trade publications was the big advertising vehicle, and when people search for products, they see these pretty ads, and their first engagement with salespeople was over the phone, and it was the salesperson that was supplying the content, the information, right at the beginning. But now the process has changed, and buyers of products and services are using the internet more often, and they're reading more content. They're basically making the decisions for themselves which vendors are going to use. So what's happening is where in the old days sales was that first contact, now marketing it is through their content and their social media and all that information that marketing is producing that potential buyers are looking at. So bigger picture, how the pendulum is switched, this is a process that has to be communicated better toward top management in this approach of sales and marketing alignment, and how the distribution of information has changed over the years.
And to that, I guess I should ask, related to that, because we're talking about the alignment, who owns the funnel? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Or is there an obvious point? I'm not very good at this, am I? Is there an obvious point where you pass that back and forth, or does sales or marketing own it? And you don't have to go in order. You can just.
I mean, for us, the question is, which funnel are you talking about? Because there's a marketing funnel and there's a sales funnel, and in our organization, it's really been kind of two siloed funnels. What we're trying to do is have marketing be a funnel that fills a sales funnel. So, I think we don't have an answer to that question. We're still asking that question, and the question is kind of which funnel and how do we make one funnel?
Yeah, and we call it smarketing. So sales and marketing own the funnel. But really, we kind of aligned around this concept that marketing owns the pipeline. So we own what's coming down the funnel. Sales owns the final conversion of what happens at the end. But that's not true in all cases. So there are times where we're doing sales on the web without any sales involvement whatsoever. So smarketing really is the answer. It's why alignment is such a big issue, because I think, as Paul said so well, the roles have changed so drastically. The buying behavior is so different today that marketing and sales are both asking, what's my role in this? And it's causing some natural tension. So a lot of people are suggesting if we just align around the common objectives, then we can figure this out together.
Yeah, and further on that, about this funnel issue, is many sales organizations, if you call that, or marketing organizations, or a combination, as we're talking about tonight, there's a mixture of inbound marketing strategies, which bring marketing leads into the funnel, and outbound marketing strategies, which is the typical cold call, and sales starts that funnel. So really, depending on the company structure and how their business model and how they measure the ROI and all those different structures is, they're all coming into the same funnel, and they all have to be nurtured through that funnel, through the process of this alignment that we're talking about here, if that makes any sense. So, it's really, it should be shared. Yeah, it is. Most companies, it is separated, but the combination of outbound and inbound together is a powerful process that can generate and nurture leads together.
What about anybody in the group? Anybody else have any insight on funnel? Who owns it? Still a little shy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still shy. There we go.
Okay, here we
Hold
go.
on.
Thank
Hold
you.
on. Let's come out.
Nobody ever accused me of being shy.
The man in the yellow tie.
Although you will notice I took off my name tag. My thought to share would be that marketing... Glad I took off my name tag. Marketing would own the funnel, but if marketing's smart, marketing's talking to sales all the time, because marketing might be generating the leads, but sales is executing a lot of the work. So marketing should be talking to the salesmen and the people they're serving to understand the objectives, the goals, what's resonating, what's not, then come back to the beginning of the funnel and start to set the tone based on what they've heard from the marketing, from the salespeople and the teams and their end users out there. So I see it as sort of like a continuous loop, a Mobius loop kind of a thing, where you better be looking both the beginning and the end, and marketing may be setting the tone, but they're listening. They're not doing it in a vacuum. Thanks.
No, it's a great point. I mean, the thing that raises is it really a funnel? And there's a lot of conversation in the marketplace about how we got to get away from the image of a funnel, because it's not a linear process. People don't fall on the top and then work their way through the funnel and ultimately pop out the bottom as a customer. There is an iterative process, and it is a continuous loop. It's a great point. And something I think we all need to think about is, do we continue to use the metaphor of the funnel?
Okay, so I have a question. If you have all these touch points and the customers are going back and forth, they're entering the cycle at different times, and the leads are being handed off and back again, how do you measure ROI? Who gets credit?
ROI. We all have to face that, don't we? And I think you have to have some... It's a hard question to answer because there's so many different elements that you're measuring. the ROI of a lead, and the ROI of the media that you're using, and the ROI of social media, and the ROI of sales, and these kinds of things, and content. It's not an easy thing to do, but you really have to start off at the top and make sure you know what your goals are. What kind of organization are you in, and if it's through your website or through other channels, what's the average cost per average sale per customer? Start working on these metrics, lifetime value, and then have conversion rates in mind, and then start figuring out, based on the quality of the leads that are coming in and estimated conversion rates and average sale, you can start working backward and coming up with a break-even analysis through each media source, and then start determining ROI. I know it's kind of technical, but bigger picture is, I don't think there is a really, you can chime in any time. It's companies grapple with this all the time. I mean, there's, did this work? And sometimes it's hard because there's so many issues with multimedia mixes and different content and social media and reach and frequency and all these kinds of things that, the issue of attribution and giving credit towards sources is not an easy thing to do. Companies are, again, grappling with it all the time and to figure out the attribution and what's a successful media mix that optimizes their ROI.
Yeah, Paul, I think you touched on it. Attribution modeling is a really complex science. Lots of companies are looking at it. We're certainly looking at it. But it's like any marketing mix analysis. You can only answer what you know, and you can answer the inputs and the outputs that are identifiable. But after that, there's going to be some leap of faith that has to take place. It's part of the discussion with social media today, where I think there is actual quantifiable ROI in social media efforts. There's a lot of value that's being created that's not quantifiable. And so, I think Paul hit on it. The one thing that we know for sure is the mix has changed. The mix from outbound interruption marketing techniques has shifted to inbound, more nurturing type of activities. And we're doing that because we know it works.
I'll be very honest. We struggle with this at Portico Systems, and we're nowhere near being able to even create those kinds of ROI calculations on our marketing efforts. And part of the reason why is we have an extremely long sales cycle. We sell to health plans. That can take 2 to 5 years, and we really can't say this marketing activity or this campaign generated a sale, because it's a combination of, it's a very labor-intensive sales process, and many things have to happen throughout the sales cycle to finally land one of these behemoths. And from a marketing perspective, we're really trying to help support that activity and really get people to raise hands and say, I want, I want to learn more. And we do webinars and we do demos and we go on site and we do consulting engagement. So for us, this is really hard. We're nowhere near cracking this nut.
Well, just to follow up on that is, if anybody monitors Google Analytics, for example, on their websites, well, it's all based on last-click metrics. So if you're doing all your decision-making on last-click metrics, you're missing everything else that's happening in this world. Sometimes it might be just as easier, and I'm just being rhetorical here, is what did we do this last quarter? What was our mix? How much did we spend? How much did we make versus the previous quarter? Sounds like our mix is doing well, so let's keep that up. And continue to, of course, optimize as you're going on. But, keep in mind that, and this is important for sales and marketing people anyway, is be careful where you make decisions on. It could hurt you at the end if you're only looking at the last touch point that somebody comes before they make a deal with you. Because there's so many other factors involved and contribution to, especially with the long buying cycle, all that ongoing social media content, research, asking people, all these different impressions, or building a brand experience with a prospect and how they're engaging with you. And eventually they're going to make that phone call saying, I'm ready to buy, because of all those impressions that come in, even though their last click might have been an SEO organic click, but they only did that because they were familiar with you from the first time around, from all that communication and content you've been giving. So,
I think Chris has a question.
All right, so on the topic of ROI, what's been more important to you? Has it been being able to go to the CEO and say, okay, here's our marketing effort, here's how much we spent, these are the sales that we can attribute it to, or is it more important to you politically, in terms of the internal organization, for sales to be totally on board and to believe in the efforts that you're doing and to be convinced that your efforts have enabled them to further enhance what they're doing. And who's the go-be? Who sells marketing to sales?
That's an excellent question. Is that directed at me?
Well,
it's yeah, I mean the latter, right? So a lot of it is around making sure we have sales buy-in on the marketing efforts, and it didn't start out that way. It was kind of like we came in there as a marketing organization and said, all right, here's how we're going to construct our mix, and here's our marketing strategy, and of course always trying to understand the target market and what's happening with the sales organization, and who are they talking to, and who are they not talking to that they want to get to. But because we can't go to senior management and say, okay, here's our marketing expenditure and this is what our return has been, it's really more about trying to politically be cohesive with the sales team and bring them on board. And a lot of it too for us has been a certain amount of making sales accountable for following up the leads that we generate. And these are marketing leads. These are not necessarily sales leads, because to me there's a difference. And a marketing lead for me is a hand raiser, somebody who attends a webinar or downloads a white paper or fills out some sort of a form on my site that says, I want to understand more about what you're doing. And for us, we have to be, we need the sales organization to say, yeah, these are the right kinds of things. And really it's been trial and error to find out what those things are. But I'm sure you've got a perspective on this question too.
Yeah, so we actually this year walked away. We used to measure separately marketing generated and sales generated opportunities. This year we actually for the first time moved away from that, because what we found was we spent most of our time doing this between marketing and sales. So we thought we were generating great stuff. We had what was called a marketing and sales handshake. We would agree with them on what a lead was. We would pass it to them. They were supposed to convert it, and they didn't. And they were generating opportunities that, oh, surprise, those things converted at 3 times the rate of a marketing generated opportunity. So, we realized that we were simply incentivizing the worst kind of behavior. So this year we actually we threw it away. Back to the attribution question, we look at marketing investment relative to our peers as a percentage of sales. We're trying to maximize the effect that we can generate with that expense. We're trying to obviously show and report on the results that we're getting from a sales opportunity standpoint, but we've gotten away from the delineation between the two. So marketing now owns that funnel, and sales is responsible for hitting their number, and we're jointly managing the process. It's not easy.
All right, so to follow up with that, then, I guess my question would be, if you're going to put me on camera, I'm putting down my drink.
Why change?
You just never know who's watching. There you go. So my follow-up question then would be, for example, for marketers who are in the room saying, geez, I don't know how to answer to whether our campaigns are successful, I don't know how to get sales to buy in. From a sales standpoint, I kind of like when people hold me accountable, but is it more of a win than to be able to have, is the return on investment, 9 out of 10 sales reps like us, a better score than we've generated this amount of money? It sounds like the answer is the buy-in from sales is more important, and maybe that's an area where marketing really needs to pull itself internally, or is that not really fair?
I just want to take a minute and apologize to the panel. Chris is a salesperson.
Yeah, hey, all right. We need him. We'd be nothing without sales. So it's a great, so I'll tell you a quick story. When I started at SAP almost 4 years ago, I had sales questioning every dollar we spent on paid search, PPC. What the heck are you doing wasting your money with Google ads? Last year, I had sales asking me why we weren't spending more. And the difference was education. The difference was that sales, and I'm not generalizing too much, but sales leadership at SAP understood that when a customer is looking to buy a product, they're at some point going to a search engine and typing in something. And that in many cases, they're buying directly from that experience. And that there has been a huge change in salespeople and sales leadership, at least at SAP, in understanding the importance of that. So it's in between. It's not necessarily getting sales to like what you're doing, and it's not ROI. It's really helping educate our sales leadership on the importance of filling that funnel, filling that pipeline, and marketing activities that there are some marketing activities that are good at that and some that aren't.
Well, and for us, we spend a lot of time on metrics around marketing activity. So because even though I can't tie it to a particular sale and say this is our return on investment on this particular campaign, what we do is we look at how many people register for a webinar, attend the webinar, and download a white paper. And what we ended up doing was we used Salesforce to track the sales activity after the fact. So we set up a process where anybody who is a lead that needs to get followed up gets put into a campaign, and our CEO said the salespeople get 48 hours to follow up on that lead. He really wanted 24, but he compromised at 48. And every Monday morning I run a report and I send it to senior leadership that shows who's followed up on those leads. And that changes behavior. And we needed to that level of accountability. And for us too, it's like, okay, so now which of these turn into a meeting, which turns into a demo? And we're trying to get to a point where we can really show how marketing helps influence the sale. But for us, it was really just putting processes in place to keep folks accountable. And then they started to pay a lot more attention and give us more feedback about, once they made those phone calls, what were they hearing on those calls?
I'm good. Okay. Oh, good.
Thanks. Actually, two questions. One is, can you clarify the difference between a marketing lead and a sales lead? And what do you say to the CEO or the head of sales when you say, well, okay, I want to spend this much on a new initiative of some sort, let's say social media, and they come back and say, well, I'll only spend that if I get 3 times that back in sales?
I guess I'll start out. So the first part of your question is, actually, let me go in reverse order. Our sales organization doesn't really have any say in our marketing spend, and that's probably shocking to everybody. But marketing puts a budget together, and a lot of it's based on what we've been doing and what we like the results of and what we didn't. And a lot of times, quite frankly, the input from the sales team is, we want to go to more events. And we say, okay, that's interesting. How many leads did we get at that show last year? 12? No, I'm not kidding. That's a real number. We went to a show and we got 12 leads. We're not doing it again. Sorry. Come up with something else. And so they don't really have input to our budget decisions, and that's probably not optimal, but that's kind of the way it works. That looks like that generated a question.
Yeah, that got me for a question, because I'm actually dealing with that right now. And we've expanded, and I'll just share this as an idea. We expanded the metric to go beyond leads, and we said we tried to follow the quality of the leads. It might have been 12, but one of those was a $2 million account. Well, I'm going back.
That's absolutely, and we did have that case at a different show. That was a pretty small number, but the sales team came back and said, okay, wait a minute, don't forget, we talked to we met this plan at that event, and then we were able to further the conversation. So it's not always a question of number. Right. And then your other question was defining marketing lead versus a sales lead. For me, a marketing lead is somebody that says, I want to learn more. A sales lead is where you have an opportunity, and in Salesforce, that's a very specific thing. That is, you have a real opportunity that's been qualified by the sales team that says, yes, there's a certain percentage of probability that this is going to happen, and this is what they're looking for. And you actually have, you're in the process of putting a contract together for those services. That's the difference for me. I'm sure Michael probably has a more full. No,
that's exactly the point. I mean, we follow a series. It's called Serious Decisions. Is a B2B lead generation consulting company. They have lead states, L0 to L5. Those are lead levels that marketing works from basically an unknown person. So someone's on your website, you don't know anything about them, all the way to what's a lead level 5, where they're fully qualified and they want to talk to a salesperson. And then they jump right from a lead state into a sales opportunity state, and then we track the stage of that opportunity. There's a different pipeline value placed upon them and a percentage of likelihood to close. So it's a very similar thing to Salesforce. But the other question you asked on ROI, yeah, we don't get that question from sales, and I would say it's the wrong question to ask, because no salesperson, having come from sales, would say that there's no value in marketing, and the value isn't just in ROI. So as a demand generation marketer, I've always said you should fill your media mix first with everything that produces an ROI. Everything that's going to generate direct sales, you should do all that you can afford to do. And then you should start working your way up the funnel towards awareness activities. There's not a single salesperson who's going to say, it's not going to help me win a deal when the prospect is aware of the company. If they know what company I'm with, if they like the company that I'm with, and they actually trust us, that's obviously the end goal. Marketing is what accomplishes most of that. So it's kind of the wrong question to ask, and I would say is really, I think Alison said it as well, it's really an opportunity for education. Yeah, and so it's an opportunity.
Well,
exactly. So it's an educational opportunity. And then finally on the event question, and I was going to bring it up earlier too, but I didn't want to hog too much of the microphone. But we look at events, we look at pipeline touched, and we measure everything. But so for our litmus test for an event is how much pipeline that's in our existing pipeline, how much dollars of opportunity can we touch in an event, because it's a closing opportunity for sales. It's not going to be something that's going to bring us in a new lead necessarily, maybe, but we know that there are certain events that close lots of deals and certain events that don't. And that's really the metric that we look at. So it's existing pipeline touched is the metric that we use.
I also wanted to throw in, this is a good time to talk about, as Michael mentioned, serious decisions and their lead scoring, is really the concept of lead scoring and marketing automation. Has anybody heard of the concept marketing automation at all in this room? A few, okay. So we can talk about the trade show leads as an example of how this works. I won't get into too much detail with it, but a lead scoring process is basically getting marketing and sales in the same room, defining who the proper leads are, like who are the qualified leads that we want to get. And there's a couple factors here. One is the demographic information of your prospects, the title, when they can make a decision, you know, the whole band thing, if I pronounce that right. And plus also some intrinsic values, which is like, what have they done to your website? What kind of content have they downloaded? What kind of pages do they visit? You combine all those things together, and you come up with a grid of a lead score. And what happens is, when you start nurturing your prospects through content and social media, things like that, through the system, well, if nobody's responding, they're staying as marketing leads. But if they start responding to your content and opening up emails and clicking content, they're getting more engaged. We score them by giving them more points on this grid, and once they hit a certain threshold, then they go to the sales department, because now they're sales ready, so to speak. Well, before they weren't, because they're not engaged with your product or service yet. So yeah, they got some initial engagement because you got their email address the first time around through this marketing automation system, but but they're just doing that initial research right now. They're the top of the funnel, so to speak. And as we guide them through the funnel with more content, then they're becoming more engaged. And when they hit that certain threshold that we decide, then the salespeople can follow up on them. And the benefit is they get more qualified leads versus more leads, which is different. And when they get better qualified leads, they can spend more time with those people. They get more revenue per deal. The sales cycle is lessened, and there's a lot of benefits with this. And we can talk about it offline if we want. But the point of the matter is, if you're going to events and trade shows, you create a campaign on your Salesforce called trade shows, right? And then you get those leads in, and you put them into the Salesforce database or the marketing automation database. And then you send them a thank you note. Thank you for coming to our booth, with a link to some content. And if they really care, they might click it and say, oh, here's a new white paper. Now they're getting more engaged. And then you're starting to say, look, we're getting more engaged people, and the lead scores are going up because of these people who came to our trade show. Now, if they're not responding to your emails and your content, then you know they're bad leads. So it gets a little technical, but I want to explain potentially how this could work as far as lead scoring and measuring the effectiveness of an event like a trade show. Hope that answers any questions or thoughts here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, then along that line, but you both have a long sales cycle. how do you decide what tools you're going to use when? Like, is there an order, or is it, depending on when you're using the automation, how do you define when do they get the white paper, or when do we pitch that versus something else?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, so this kind of brings up content marketing, and I think if I said quality versus quantity of leads is the biggest issue between sales and marketing, the second biggest issue is content. And I was actually on a webcast earlier this week, and this question came up. And there was a report done by IDC, an analyst firm, and they asked customers what the biggest problem was with salespeople, and they said salespeople aren't prepared for when they come and talk to me. Then they asked salespeople, what's your biggest problem? What happens that goes wrong in a sales call? And they said, well, the content marketing gave you stinks, it sucks. So obviously there's a disconnect, and so in light of that kind of question, sales is kind of blaming marketing for the content. So I think the biggest answer to that question is making sure that there's content mapped to the buying process and mapped to all the different personas of people that you could potentially be calling on. And when marketing can, or the organization at large, can produce and deliver to sales that kind of content, I'm not saying it's going to solve all the customer problems, because the customers clearly think it's the salespeople that are the problem. But at least they'll be enabled with the right content for the right situations, and can't then claim that as their biggest problem.
Great. Do you want to add anything?
As far as we've chosen some tools that we use. I don't know that it's really related to where people are in the sales cycle. Am I answering the question correctly? Mm-hmm. We're a quickly growing company. We're trying some different things. We made a decision jointly with sales and marketing to implement Salesforce after using a different tool. And really, we're just trying to leverage those tools to the maximum to help our efforts and to understand more about not only buying behavior, but also, browsing behavior. What are people interested in? And, what we're trying to do is, it's not like, okay, when do we offer the white paper versus the webinar versus this? We really are trying to offer a lot of those different tactics and allowing the prospect to decide when they want to consume that content. So, our mix includes, and I've said it a few times, webinars, white papers, blogs, we have a Twitter feed, we're trying to, and, quite frankly, public relations, a good tried and true, media relations and getting news stories out there on a timely basis, all helps fuel that mix. So, we're trying to really offer a lot of different opportunities for people to consume information about what we do.
Yeah, content marketing is not an easy thing, because it does take some due diligence to understand your target audiences, and there's many products and services that have multiple audiences, and with different benefits. Like, if there's a software solution and there's a benefit for saving the company money, well, that is more of a CFO type thing, where if it makes a process easier and more efficient, that may be more of an R&D decision maker. Then there's different influencers under that as well, and we all read blogs and things like that. But so by choosing the content that's relevant to that audience at the same time, it's like any media plan. You're targeting different influencers with different content that appeals to them with their own solutions that you're trying to satisfy their needs with. And different people and different companies have different needs, even though it's the same solution. Faster, convenient, save money, all those kinds of things. And so you got to figure out, in a pipeline of content, which approaches you want to use. For instance, if you're targeting a C-level CFO type person, he may not have time to sit through a webinar, but he'll certainly read a white paper about how your solution saves companies money. Where a different kind of buyer, like an R&D person or a tech person, might say, here's a webinar demonstrating how this solution can help your division, work more efficiently. So those kinds of things, and especially if it's a long buying cycle, you might need demonstrations to showing how this could work. I mean, you see a lot of PowerPoint presentations with copy and things like that. So I think a good balance of mix of content and testing them and seeing what kind of people respond. But it's really, content is king. And so you want to map it out, even have an editorial calendar and set it up with all your different audiences and all the different topics. And again, why it's hard work, because you're not only reaching these buyer personas and who they are and what they do, but it's also where they are in the buying cycle. And like we mentioned that before is, am I not in the beginning stages? What kind of content do I need then? Versus case studies to validate my decisions. So, and that's why we exist, to help companies do that.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, add on to what Paul just said. Portico Systems sells to U.S. health plans. There's about 300 of them. Out of those 300, we're really targeting about the top 70. Very, very targeted market. However, within that health plan, there are at least a dozen different types of titles that we can sell to or engage in part of the buying decision. And so for the struggle for us has been how to reach those different folks in those different parts of the plan where we have an enterprise level type of software that can solve a lot of different problems. And so, part of what we do as a marketing organization, and we do this in conjunction with the sales team, is putting together a messaging matrix. So what are the key messages to each of those different types of, people with different responsibility areas? So, while, it's been nice to work at Portico because we have such a tightly defined market, it's also been interesting and challenging to help message to all of those different levels. And, a director, at our webinars, you're going to get directors, maybe some VPs. We're never going to see a C-level person from a health plan come to our webinars, and we know that. So we actually create campaigns around, content specifically for that C-level audience. And quite frankly, they're not really even reading their emails. It's really more about, hoping that the emails support the rest of our activity, which is really a lot of direct sales contact and quite frankly, print, dimensional things to get on the desk and going to the kinds of shows or events that those folks are going to. So, for me, a messaging matrix has been really, really important in helping us really, really hone in on what are the key messages for those different types of buyers and influencers.
So when I ask the question at what point in the sales cycle and how do you choose tools, it's really more about not just where they are in your cycle, but who they are.
For us, it's about who we are.
Yeah, I think they both said it best. It's just having the right content available and letting the customers choose the right piece, I think, is the best advice.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
Or comments?
Yeah, or things that have worked for you. I mean, we're not all the experts up here. You guys are experts too. So if you've had solutions that have worked, please let us know. When we talked, I guess it was last month or so ago, Michael, you said something really interesting. You said sales only cares about what marketing did yesterday that will help them today, not what marketing is doing today that will help sales tomorrow. And I thought that was really interesting coming from a sales perspective. It is, I mean...
It's been converted.
Yeah. Want to sell it now.
Well, it's true. I mean, there's even I've even read articles that said marketing and salespeople are incompatible, and it's just not true. I mean, we just have a different perspective and a different time frame that we're operating under. And I can't take credit for this. Someone else told me this, but they said that marketing is looking for Mr. Right, and sales is looking for Mr. Right now. And it's true. So there's tremendous amounts of commonality in what we're trying to achieve. But there's slight differences, and it's just about respecting what those differences are. And like I said earlier, what I've seen such a huge change in recently is sales leadership people who understand the value of long-term marketing. And they understand that it's an easier sale today because marketing did something yesterday. And that's different from 10, 20 years ago when not all salespeople, there's still plenty of salespeople who think marketing doesn't get it, and there's still plenty of marketing people who think sales are a bunch of yahoos, and
I've never heard that.
Yeah, and it really is changing.
A question back here. So I have a follow-up, a different kind of ROI. So are we better off as marketers investing time in building relationships with the sales department, or are we better off investing in educating our sales department?
Both. Both. Sorry. I'm not going to pick one.
Yeah, no, it's not a choice. You have to do. So when I started marketing at a small company, I became best friends with the head of sales. I mean, I sat down. It was not, I'm the marketing guy and you're going to listen to me. It was, you're the sales guy. You've got to take this thing the last mile. So you tell me what I can do to help you. It's about the relationship. And you know, you're lucky if you have a salesperson who understands the marketing process, and you're challenged if you don't, and you have to educate them, but you can't not, because you'll be stuck in the situation of, we'll justify every marketing expense with a 3x ROI. Well, that's not going to produce long-term value for the company.
There's a natural reaction for sales to make the deal, you know, get that deal closed. How do you, as an organization, Allison and Michael, keep your eye on customer satisfaction in the long-term relationship? I guess, is that clear to make that? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was in sales, we had a salesperson who was the top salesperson, and her whole approach was to give away the store. And so it was easy to become the top salesperson when everything is discounted 75%. So then we got smart, we implemented, you know, profitability margin targets. So, you know, then every deal that she did came in at exactly the ceiling of the profitability margin, and the next person that would come in to service the account, you know, found a pretty unhappy customer. So then we got smart, we realized, well, customer satisfaction is something that needs to be tracked. So, you know, the answer really is sales needs to have a stake in customer satisfaction. At SAP, every sales rep that carries a bag has a goal to maintain a certain level of customer satisfaction. And the only way to get through and motivate any salesperson is with their compensation. And so their compensation is tied, I think, at 15 or some you know, relatively tangible percentage to that metric. So it's important.
We recently, within the last year, we had a reorganization of our executive team. Again, just we're growing so rapidly that was necessary. And part of that reorganization was to establish a whole team dedicated to customer experience. And those folks get on the phone and they talk to our customers. And you know, they have surveys that they go through, and they help share that information with the rest of the organization about what's working and how we're perceived. And you know, another thing that we do that has been very successful over the last couple of years is to put on an annual customer conference. And again, you know, small market, we have about 40 customers, so this is a lot easier to do than it is for SAP. But you know, we invite them locally. We're headquartered in Bluebell, and we get them together for about 2.5 days, and most of the customers do the presenting. It's not Portico talking to our customers. We work with them to put their presentations together, and they talk about best practices and the pitfalls that they've encountered and lessons learned, and we, you know, as a group, we talk about what's happening in the industry and what are some of the trends, and how, you know, we of course talk about how Portico is responding to those trends with our product roadmap and those types of things, and we bring other industry experts in. And I'll tell you, there's nothing richer that we do throughout the entire year than getting in within 4 walls of our customers once a year to just hear what they care about and what matters to them. And you know, it's a very rich experience as a marketer, because we don't have as much interaction with the customers as the sales team does. And I'll tell you, it gives the salespeople a different perspective too, and our product team, and our executive team, and our board members come. And you know, it's that kind of ability to listen for once in a while and not always be talking at them, to really understand what they care about, and make sure that as an organization we're delivering on that. And so those are, you know, that the customer conference for me is just, it's the richest thing that we do all year long.
I think, Michael, you do a little one as well?
Yeah, no, no, I agree. I mean, it's, I was part of a customer advisory board with my first company, and it was, to this day, still the most rewarding experience I've ever been a part of. And I had that from both the sales and marketing perspective. But I was talking to someone before the session tonight that one of the best ways to get marketing to see the perspective of sales is to make marketing go out on sales calls. And I think Allison got the point at getting marketing and sales to hear what the customer pain points are. It's really important for marketing to see really the challenges that salespeople face on a daily basis, and that's how I think true alignment and true customer satisfaction can really be achieved.
And further, actually, at Portico, marketing and sales put the customer presentations together as a team. It's not sales doesn't take a deck and go run off and do presentations. And again, this is very consultative selling. It's a very long process. You're presenting a lot of the same information to multiple groups. You kind of get maybe this core group, and then they go, oh yeah, that's interesting. Let me pull some more people in. And we put that content together with the sales organization. And we're frequently either presenting or in the room, listening in on calls, and understanding really what happens. I mean, we can't. Otherwise, you're working in a vacuum, and I think you talked about that, and that's another very rich experience, is being able to be part of that presentation or those presentations.
Does anyone here go out on sales calls with their sales force? Chris
Any marketing people?
Any marketing people go out on sales calls?
Yeah, it's so important. So the head of our field sales organization, he wants marketers to be able to do three things. One is go out on a sales call at least once a quarter. The second is to be able to deliver the company elevator pitch, unique selling proposition, whatever you want to call it. And the third is to be able to demo a product, which for us, our products aren't necessarily the easiest things to demo. So it's quite a challenge, and he set it up as a somewhat audacious goal for us. But I think it's great for marketing to take on those kinds of challenges.
Do you have any questions out there? I can't see. No? So back to kind of going through this sales timeline thing again, but in a different way. Is there a difference to sales when you're in Q1 versus Q4, and what your role is to help them?
Yes. We tend to have a lot of activity in Q1 and Q4 and not as much in 2 and 3. So, we plan to step our efforts up in those quarters to help help with those sales cycles. Those are just natural times when there's more selling happening. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we see the same. I think marketers sometimes have difficulty understanding the cycles that sales teams go through, and the beginning and end of any period, whatever the period might be, whether it's a quarter or a year, are really challenging times for salespeople. They have to create their plans, they have to deliver their plans, and there's a different sort of vibe that happens when you're doing both of those two activities. So it's important for marketing to be flexible and understand the different requirements to meet the needs of our sales customers at those times.
And we do our planning, we do it annually, and we do it in October and November. So by the beginning of December, we've got our budget set so that, Q1 kicks off, we are ready to rock and roll, and we know what we have to spend and where we're spending it, and we plan it out for the whole year with some flexibility. We kind of do things we have a 12-month plan, but then we do a 6-month very tactical plan, and then a second 6-month tactical plan. And again, that's completely in support of our sales cycle.
Okay. Do you see anything in marketing automation, how that can help in the difference between the quarters?
Not really.
Okay.
It's an ongoing process. I mean, to put it in another phrase, marketing automation. Let's create another buzzword here, which is lead nurturing, and that's what marketing automation is. So, and this is again about aligning marketing and sales, because salespeople love it when they get leads and they don't have to do much work because the marketing's doing all the work and the content's doing all the work. But that's what lead nurturing is, and it's working on those bad leads that salespeople don't like. Well, we don't avoid them, right? No matter what time of year it is or what quarter it is, they come in. We're not avoiding them. We're going to nurture them in a different way, And like we mentioned before about the content and the engagement as it builds, no matter what quarter it's in, these bad leads are going to be eventually become good leads. And if you're not, some of them will, not all. Yeah, some of them will. Well, you know the old thing about the 85-15 or whatever the percentage is. 15% are great leads, 50% stink. It's the other 70% we got to work on, right? So, did the math right? But you know, so that's a, you know, it's not a quarterly thing. It's an ongoing process of nurturing, and you know, once those people become sales ready, then you know it's bingo, and it just makes the sales so much easier when you're dealing with people that are engaged.
Yeah, I mean, a real life example. We have this conversation with the same team at the same point in time every year, and it goes like this. So they get squeezed, and they see that they're not going to hit their number. So then they start dialing for dollars, and then they get frustrated because they're not hitting their numbers still, and they say, well, give me all the crap that you're still working, because I'd rather call that than call the Yellow Pages. So then we give them that crap, and then they turn around and they say, that's crap, so stop giving me that. Happens every year, and so now we're just prepared for it.
I have a question, please. I've heard a couple times the phrase marketing automation. For me, I find that phrase scary. Not because I don't understand it, it's because I'm afraid it's going to commoditize the individual that you're trying to reach. And I came from a direct response background, and I always interpret that as mass marketing to the individual. So if John Smith was a lead at a trade show, you scan his badge, you check him off, you feed him in. Well, I would prefer that the sales guy for that territory says, hey, Mr. Smith, thanks so much for coming by. I'm really glad to hear that you own 2 Rottweilers just like I do. How about we get together and follow up on our conversation rather than, thank you for dropping by our booth. Here is a link to a white paper, blah, 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 blah. So I guess my question for you all is, do you find a way in your particular instances to incorporate some customization, individualization in your marketing automation?
Well,
or not.
Well, I mean, best practices is it is customized, and you know, I'll try to answer your question. I mean, first of all, nurturing happens not just with marketing and sales; it works together. You know, the marketing automation, it's called marketing automation, not sales automation, for a reason. But the benefit is sales. So it's like anything with marketing, as you spoke about, you know, about different touch points. It's still relationship marketing. And this is a scenario where you're creating ongoing relationships in the background by giving people their blogs and promoting your white papers and case studies and webinars. It's still, it's marketing and it's sales at the same time. But you know, the relationship and doing that is vital. Now, here's an example of how marketing automation works, because a salesperson can go into their sales force, and typically without it, they see opportunities and they see the campaigns and things like that. With the plug-in with marketing automation, they can now see the media source they came in, what white papers they downloaded, what trade shows they were at. I mean, there's a lot of detail you can get, you know, and what emails they clicked. And so what happens there is now the salesperson can have even a better conversation with that lead, because they know what they did. Yeah, it's a little bit Big Brother's watching you, but it also helps, you know, the conversation. You know, what did you think of our latest blog post that you read, or whatever, and or, you know, create that dialogue and create that relationship. And when that happens, you know, your closes go up when you have a positive dialogue with a prospect.
But I think the question is still out there. You have that, you know, thank you for downloading our white paper, but you don't have that personal connection where they had a whole conversation at an event, and the message that they get totally eliminates that conversation. Like you said, if it's about the dogs, I mean, that's a connection that they made at that show that is really helpful.
They're not mutually exclusive, though. I mean, it's really, marketing automation is designed really to supplement the sales efforts. And I absolutely want the salespeople calling and having that. I'd rather they have that conversation than get the automated email follow-up. And, you know, the other thing about marketing automation is you can customize it, and it can be only for a short period of time. And maybe that person only gets 3 email messages. And the content of those messages is specific to what action they took. So if they downloaded this white paper, then they get 2 follow-ups or 3 follow-ups that are related to that. If they attended a webinar or registered for a webinar, the content is related to that. It doesn't exclude the sales phone call. I want that sales phone call happening because to me that's more valuable.
Sure.
But then it solves the problem of those leads that don't get touched.
It absolutely does. I guess part of the caution would be that I've heard even on my own team that I'm currently rebuilding, we can automate more. Oh, we can automate more. And I just want to make us remind ourselves not to advocate automation. That's probably where I will leave it because I think, Allison, you're spot on, and so is Paul.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great. I was going to say, but I knew you knew this, but I was going to say marketing automation isn't automated marketing, and there is a difference. A quick story on nurturing, which marketing automation really is automated nurturing in a lot of ways. And I always used to say nurture happens, and what I meant by that was we are hitting our prospect database with email messages that are completely uncoordinated. And marketing automation is coordinating that activity, and that's the benefit that it brings. The high-touch, highly personalized activity that needs to happen still needs to happen and still should happen.
And it's more beneficial when it happens to people that are closer to being sales ready than people that aren't, who don't want to hear about you. Because you're just not ready yet. And we've all done that. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Or they don't remember you, you know.
Yeah, so it keeps your name out there. So it's a tactic, but there's many tactics involved with touch points and creating relationships. It's one of many, but the big picture is lead nurturing is an important process that aligns marketing and sales, and one of the most important processes out there is to have that happening so those leads don't leave the funnel and go someplace else, and that's the fear. Keeping that dialogue, whether it's through phone, through social media, and through content and email, all those things, keeping in front of the customer with something relevant to their needs will keep those prospects engaged to hopefully become a sale.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, I think it can help to drive the delivery of something that's more relevant to people, but I think more so it's the case that it can stop us from delivering things that are somewhat off-putting. So, being the spam cannon or the spray and pray, hopefully we'll stop doing that and seeing our opt-out rates drive up, through the roof, and do less marketing that's more related to what they're looking for.
We have about 10 minutes left. So if you have a burning question, now's the time to ask it.
Curveball time.
Yeah. Anyone? There we go.
The answer is yes to everything. Okay, we're done.
Earlier we talked about ROI, we talked about leads, and then you talked about activities. Are you putting any ROI to activities that aren't necessarily leads, but their time spent on the site, white paper download, stuff like that, that leads to then obviously enough of those activities that become a lead? Or is that factoring in at all?
I mean, we measure everything. So yeah, we measure every activity that occurs. It's not valued with a pipeline amount necessarily, but usually it's relative. So if we had 100,000 visitors on a website yesterday and we get 110,000 today, that's good. It's not an ROI value, but it's something we track for sure.
Well, I mean, everything is trackable to a point, but yeah, again, leveraging that ROI is such a broad stroke, but there's value in measuring content and measuring leads because it does set a framework of your activity. Still using analytics, but it's but also how many times was it tweeted, how many times was it forwarded, how many times was it liked, and you build all those things together, in maybe your own dashboard to show and measure that activity with other activities, and you can actually tell at least which is more valuable content for the future based on the shares and all that. If you could build it into a custom landing page with a form, with all these activities, that landing page is only in those activities, and there might be a way to measure the leads that come in and take that into a sale. But go ahead.
You can measure everything and look at it, but not everything is equally important. So you kind of have to make some decisions about what are the things that are going to be meaningful to your organization. And a lot of that's just trial and error in what works in your particular marketplace. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
yes, we're talking about like light conversions versus heavy conversions, and sort of situations where maybe you don't have a lot of impressions or leads coming through, and you can start to see that it has potential in the future to generate real leads, but maybe right now it's just long term,
right.
Or that bad needs to be nurtured.
Well, and I think a lot of that's testing, right? So, Michael talked earlier about, there's particular things that like, okay, these are the things that are going to generate return on investment. So you're going to put every dollar you can into those activities, and then you're going to test some of the other things too. For me, social media is an example. It's something we just kind of started getting our feet wet with about a year ago, and suddenly my CEO wants to know how many people have subscribed to the blog. So, before we were talking little teeny numbers, but, when you see something grow, then you say, oh, there's maybe a little bit more significance to that particular activity. So, yeah, you are, I think any respectable marketer is going to always have some of those things out there that they're kind of testing the waters and seeing, does this work for my market or not? And then you got kind of your tried and trues, which For us, it's webinars. Webinars are our number one lead generator for our particular company. We only know that because we tried it out 5 years ago. We said, you know what, let's try this out. And slowly it's grown.
So 5 years from now, you might be saying our blog is our number one lead generator.
It may be.
About the webinars and how effective they are.
What would you like to know?
With respect to, you had mentioned that that's your number one lead generator. I was wondering if anyone else had anything to add as far as their experience using webinars as an attractive mechanism to gain exposure.
We have questions for everybody, so.
Yeah. There we go.
Ken over here.
I think the webinars are probably one of the most effective things because people don't want to be sold. They want to learn, they want to gain information. So if they're going to go to a webinar because they're not threatened, there's a topic that they have interest in, they have an opportunity to gain knowledge about a particular subject, so they're going to join that. In several different instances, I found that webinars are probably one of the best lead sources, but it takes time. It's got to tie into your content marketing, and it's got to provide valuable information, both in the marketing communication about the webinar, and then once you have the webinar, you got to do it right so they're engaged in the webinar.
Well, and take that further, and that's a good point there. Again, it goes back to nurturing again. What do you do with those leads when they come in? Now listen, there's going to be attendees, there's going to be people that drop off, there's going to be people who register. Some people probably didn't show up here, and I'm going to get them. But I get their food. But the point of the matter is again, that's another scenario, not to belabor the point, but you put those leads and you score those leads, register but don't attend, attendees. Attendees are more engaged, they're more interested. I mean, they made time to do that. Not saying the other people didn't, but that's a different lead score. Then you might send them a different content email saying, I'm sorry you didn't come. Here's another link to our webinar, and here's us. And to the people who did come, you can thank them and send them another link to, as a compliment to what we just showed you. Here's a sample case study of what we just presented. So you're creating these stories, and really that's what we're talking about here, is we're creating stories about our companies. We're getting people along from the first chapter all the way through the end. The webinar is an important chapter, but the webinar shows up later on in the book because you're nurturing them to become more engaged with you with relevant content.
And I think you did bring up the point, too, which I heard was you have to do a good job. A webinar isn't a magic bullet, and you have to choose the right tool for your audience, too. There's some audiences that you're never going to score with a webinar, and you're never going to score with a sales webinar. They have to be educational.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen a lowering yield, meaning that we're not seeing lower results from our webinars. We're seeing lower results per webinar based on the amount of activity that we have to put in. So it's an important part of the mix, and I think it always will be. But we're looking at looking for the next thing that's driving that kind of high growth for results.
So on the same topic, who drives the content? When you decide, okay, we're going to do a webinar, is the topic determined exclusively by marketing? Is it a result of sales saying, hey, our clients are interested in this topic, let's speak to them about this? And then when it comes time to produce a webinar, are you finding that it's better to produce it internally by going to sales and having the VP of sales present it? Are there sales reps lining up saying, no, me, no, me? How do you because I could say I would be, even the good sales reps like to talk. I guess my question is, how do you,
Allison,
how does that develop?
Okay.
And what's
How
the
do you
most
decide?
successful?
Marketing drives most of what happens with the webinars. We love to hear from the salespeople, hey, we've got a lot of activity, a lot of people asking questions about credentialing. Can you please put a webinar together about credentialing? The stance that we take with our webinars is we've branded them as thought leadership webinars. They're not sales demos. For us, a sales demo would be an after the webinar activity. It's about what's happening in the marketplace and what's of interest to our target market. It's not, hey, here's how Portico, this is what Portico's solution is. Of course, it's inferred that we have a solution to address this issue, and yes, we always do. But and to further along, to answer another part of your question, our sales team doesn't deliver the webinars. They're subject matter experts about that particular topic. It can be product managers. It's our chief executive, or excuse me, not our chief executive officer, our chief operating officer. Some of the folks who are in our strategy team. They're people who are experts in that particular topic, and they're typically either directors or VPs, and in some cases we have a couple C-level folks who deliver those. And those are the same people who we tap to write blog content and to write bylined articles. Bylined articles have been another great opportunity for us, really to get our name out there, and that's why our public relations has been so important. What we've noticed, I've seen in my 25 years of marketing a major shift in PR in that, publications are downsizing like mad. They don't have enough content creators, and they are now open, where they never were before, to a company like Portico providing them with articles. And because we don't do a sales article, it's a topic in line with the same kinds of topics for our webinars. It's around what's happening in the industry, what's of importance, what's happening with healthcare reform, and how does that impact the health plan, and what are different ways that you can reimburse physicians to, and of course we've got a software that supports that. But, so that's been another activity. It's not a lead generator because people are out there reading an article, and it's more about awareness and getting our message out there. So it's a little bit of both with sales and marketing, but more heavily on the marketing side. So.
I think we have time for one more question.
Make it a good one.
The question, I hope it is. It's the one I've been dying to ask. By the way, in terms of webinar content, don't forget going to outside experts, by the way.
Yes,
Don't have to be in-house. My question for the room at large, not just our panelists, is we're all B2B type people, and I'm dying to hear anecdotally, has Facebook and or Twitter had any impact, any benefit? You're relevant. I hear this talked about. I have doubts. I hear promises. I hear all sorts of things. So if anybody's using Facebook and Twitter, pro or con, if they could kick in ideas in the last 2 minutes, I'd really appreciate hearing about it. So,
I'll start if it's okay with everyone. So a couple of things. ROI is the big question that often gets asked, and you didn't ask that exactly, but ROI is a calculation of return over investment. It's not a lot of investment in social media, but if you reverse it and say, what's the cost of not being there? There's plenty of examples out there right now, BP being probably the best one, of what can happen when you're not present and listening to the conversations that are happening. So for me, the biggest value to any senior executive when having a discussion on social media is that the cost of not being involved in social media is way too great to not spend the small amount of money and effort and time to be engaged there. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn is kind of irrelevant. It's really being there is important because your customers are there, and if something were to happen around your company, your brand, or your industry, and you're not part of that conversation when it does, it could be a disaster for your company.
I completely agree with everything Michael said, and you know, in addition, it's social media has become an outlet for us to leverage some of the other content that we're creating. So if we do a byline article, we can slice a part of it out and create a blog, or we have our CEO make a comment about this this article and leverage it in social media. And you know, as a software company, we have to be there. You know, are my customers there? Maybe, maybe not, but I can tell you that the health plans are there, and they're out there actively messaging to members, and so I want to be there before all my customers and prospects get there, and they're slowly starting to get there. And so, you know, to reiterate Michael's point, we have to be there because we're going to miss it otherwise.
You know, it's case by case. Survey your customers. How do they research products? That's number one. How do they find out about you? How do they learn about you? Maybe it's not Twitter. Maybe it's not Facebook. Doesn't have to be. Does it have to be TV? No. Survey them. Research. It's not just the medium. It's the message, too. And we talked about content. What message? What keywords? SEO research. All these kinds of things. I mean, whatever the tactic is, it starts with a strategy. And before the strategy, it starts with what's our message and who's our audience and how do they research us. You know, I've had clients where they're a new industry, so I don't even know to look for them. So that's a different kind of messaging. I mean, this is awareness messaging. So it may be advertising in trade journals and direct mail because you're trying to create awareness. Search engines and social media, things like that. Search engines are called search for a reason. I'm looking for something. So you keep that in mind. If you're not looking, if you don't have a market for that product or service, you don't need it yet. But bigger picture, we talk about social media and things like that. It's really case by case, but it's not just what it is. It's how you use it. It's not about getting, I have 20,000 followers, I must be good. Well, if all you're doing is retweeting other people's content and you're and trying to be number one in followers, it's BS. You know, it's you know, social media is about conversation and dialogue. I know it's kind of jargonish here, but it's true. It's creating relationships. I mean, you create relationships through social media, through email, through direct call. That's what it's all about. It's a form of lead nurturing. You're out there communicating why you're a good business to hire. So, but you know, everything's individual and everything's measurable to a point. But you know, it's got to feel good. It's got to feel right with your audience.
I'm interested in other people around the room.
I can tell you from a small business standpoint, I started using social media, specifically not Facebook, but Twitter and my blog, running hand in hand. And I started in November of 2009, and I would say that my business has quadrupled in that time, and I can point every single thing right back to the relationships that I've built through Twitter and my blog. But my industry is very active in social media.
She knows her audience. You have to know yours.
What about other people?
Anyone else?
Steve.
Regarding having a blog, I understand and appreciate the value of it, but the fear of it is not keeping current. Knowing myself, I would put something out and probably 3-4 months later think of something else to say. So do you have any advice for how you keep a blog current in a B2B environment so that it is something that people would find new information and something relevant, and then they would respond to it?
You've got to put a program in place, and you have to identify who's going to be writing the blog, and you put a schedule together of topics and who's writing which one, and put deadlines around it and put a whole process around it. It's a struggle because most of my C-level group, who are the ones who are subject matter experts, and in the next layer down, they're a little gun shy, and I've never written a blog before. Well, it's 2 paragraphs. That's what it is. It's your thoughts, and it's much more free form and relaxed. Now, as far as Twitter's concerned and Facebook, we have our PR agency helping us with that. So we deliver content to them. We write our own content, and they slice and dice it up and create, Twitter-friendly versions of it, things on Facebook, and it supplements our PR efforts. But yeah, because you don't want to be there and be stagnant.
There's a number of ways to help you there. You start thinking about widening where you can get your content. Talk to your customers, ask them to do podcasts, video blogs, things like that. Right, Steve?
Yes, thank you.
Steve, if you read other people's blogs, repurpose that with your own spin on it. Fred talked about this. Here's my thoughts. So there's, but really, in other case studies and things like that, everything that you write about, even to little tiny thing, it's a story about yourself and your company. And people are reading it, or again, they're engaging with you because you find you're writing interesting things. So no matter how small it is, if it relates to some sort of problem-solving topic, then that's great stuff. Yeah. And don't forget the challenge with keywords and doing some best practices. So search engines find it with certain keywords because a lot of people do Google alerts and RSS feeds and things like that. And if they want to follow you and find those terms, they'll go to your blog and if they like what they read, they'll subscribe to it, and then you have an engaged potential customer.
I think we have to wrap up. We have time for one more. I was just going to say, though, this sounds like it might be our next program topic. Social media and B2B. Anybody interested in going to that?
Ooh, another social media topic. Ooh.
Well, blogging, I think. I'll just say this. Everyone has had the fear that you have. Anyone that blogs, and the most popular bloggers out there have had that fear, and it's called the blank page syndrome, and everyone has it. And some of the more popular blog posts out on the internet are 100 ways to write your next blog post. So you're not alone.
I tell clients who have trouble with that is, at least from an SEO perspective, I don't really call it a blog page. I mean, it's important, but there's also what I call a variable content page, because search engines like it when websites change, and with variable content.
We'll have to save
and
this
we'll save
for the
that for
next
another trip. But
okay,
that's a tease.
I was just going to say that a lot of my clients have implemented social media plans in the last year or two, and I get a lot of questions from my other clients about what people are doing. And I think that one of the reasons that people don't start a social media program is because they think they have to jump to really what is the third level of it, which would be actually producing content such as a blog. But there's really 2 stages before that you have to go through. One is kind of active listening, what's being said about me, my company, my industry, and getting used, and keeping track of that. And then the second stage is responding to content that's out there and presenting yourself as knowledgeable that way, responding to other people's blog posts and other people's content. You don't go you should not go, I don't think, straight to, I'm going to just jump into social media, and there has to be a plan, and you have to kind of go through the stages. And my clients who have been most successful with it, that's how they've done it.
Okay, so thanks everybody for coming out. Pardon?
Thank you, sponsors. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation from the Business Marketing Association of Philadelphia. For more information, visit bmaphiladelphia.org. This program was produced in the studios of Professional Podcasts in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at professionalpodcasts.com. For everyone at the BMA Philadelphia, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.